Hi, my name is Mark Teater, and I'm here to present to you about my thesis called Farmur. It's a combination of the words urban and farming. First, a little bit about myself before I dive in. My undergraduate was in media production and business. I'm very interested in social issues and creative solutions for those problems. I'm also interested in horticulture and considered almost going into horticulture before I started this program. Lastly, I'm very interested in motion graphics, and before I started the program I remember looking at motion graphics and going, man, wouldn't that be neat if I could create something like that, because it really inspired me, and I know it inspired other people that I talked to. A few pieces for my portfolio. First off, I created a motion graphic that's for a little bumper for MTV. In 2013, 2012 to 2013, I was on a team that created an app that is now in the App Store. It's called Spacebar, and it broadcasts live audio from soundboards. I was in charge of the user interface, user experience, and just pretty much any design materials that they needed, and it launched at TechCrunch Disrupt. The other project I'd like to talk about is Freedom Infographic I created, and this one was at the Spring Show in 2013. I learned a lot about refined timing cuts so that I could get the animation spot on. I also learned about repeats, delays, and offsets, where I would actually create a simple animation but create multiples of the same animation and stagger them so that it would create this really complex looking animation from something really simple. I also learned about using expressions to connect layers, which also leads to master control layers, where you could set up one layer that everything connects to and apply a single change across the whole project, really simplifying the process. A little bit about my project. Farmur is solving a problem, and that problem is that there are no rich media educational tools explaining urban farming concepts and how to start simple. I decided to go ahead and solve this problem through a responsive website that goes ahead and explores the urban farming and simplifies this learning curve to help inspire people to get started. I did this through a 3-minute motion graphic, 2 interactive infographics, a cost and size or a garden estimator, and 16 pages of illustrated content that I created. To start this off, I researched a lot. Farmur went through a lot of research, and one of the interesting things that I learned was that about the population, which I think a lot of people know this, but 80.7% of people in the United States live in a city or an urban environment. Chances are you live in an urban environment. Also, age. One of these interesting things was that for every one farmer under the age of 25, there are 5 who are 75 years and older. And what this is saying is that our farming population, or people who work in agriculture, are aging, and there aren't people replacing that population. So there's a segment of our population who is really young who aren't actively engaging in agriculture. So with that information, I said, well, are people interested in farming? I need to check this out. So I went to Google Trends, and I looked up worldwide farming. And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. It actually shows a trend upwards. People are interested in this. Curious. So I typed in infographic. Interestingly enough, around 2009, right when this starts, is the iPad came out. It shows that people are really interested in like really visually rich, interactive infographic type things. And lastly, I focused just on the United States, and I looked up urban farms. And what's interesting about this graph is not only does it show the trend upward, but it also shows seasonally there are spikes now that people are developing habits. So with all this research, I condensed it down to my target audience, and I came up with 18 to 30-year-olds who live in urban areas. They are interested in the food supply, how it affects them, how they could be involved. And they are attracted to gardening. Maybe they're already gardening, maybe they have, experience with friends who are gardening, but overall they're really interested in just getting involved in some form, even if it's a small way. My primary target audience is Sarah Fenkema. She is 26 years old. She is interested in growing her own food, and she is a middle school teacher. She also has a lot of students that she'd like to inspire, and she's always looking for tools that she can place in front of them to guide them through why the food system is the way it is, how they can get involved, and what they can do simply. She also reads a lot of articles on regional food systems and how it affects her and her students and family and friends, and shares them out. Primary competitor is a website called urbanfarming.org. And this website is a nonprofit, so I want to say I'm actually a direct competitor because I don't want to put them out of business, but they are doing something similar. And on their website, they have garden locations. It's not updated that often, and some you won't actually find, but they are there. There are short documentaries, videos that are low budget, not edited that well, but they are very informational. There are discussion boards that are kind of empty. It's more like a frequently asked questions because people don't post that often. It's just like an archive. And it has a very frustrating design. You can click on something and end up in a completely different area that you didn't expect. There are layers that don't need to be there. And ultimately, you just feel like you get lost trying to find exactly what you want to find. So Farmur is in a very unique position in that interaction encourages active engagement. This is to say that Farmur is asking the person to interact and touch and respond and actively find out and discover and explore. Before people start their garden is where Farmur is focusing. And what I've found is that a lot of the resources that are out there today are actually resources that are focused on after you've started your garden. Somebody who has a tomato garden and they want to grow bigger tomatoes, or they want to know how to weed better or keep plants or little bugs off. But there aren't any tools out there that are inspiring people just to get started simply. So I would like to focus on just showing more illustrative content and less text, because a lot of these websites have plenty of text to get through, and it's really hard to find exactly what you're looking for. So if I make it visually appealing with a little bit of text, I figure people are more likely to take in what's there. I'll go ahead and just open it up and show you. Walk you through Farmur. There's a brief loading screen here, because there is a lot of illustrative content. But I'm going to go ahead and start off with the video that I'm encouraging people to watch. And this is a motion graphic that I created.
A farm at its basic level is an area of land and buildings that are used for growing crops and rearing animals. While we often think of farms located in rural areas, urban farming goes all the way back to Mesopotamia. As agriculture spread across the globe, cities began to store food, aqueducts brought water into the cities, the Arab Empire spread crops and new methods, people adapted growing methods for new climates, and new technology brought about familiar brands. Within the United States of America, the urban farm gained quite a lot of ground during World War I and World War II. With so many resources going to fight the wars, people were encouraged to cut back and step up to fill in the gaps. In order to support the food supply of the nation, people were encouraged to start a victory garden anywhere they could. This created an upsurge in urban farmers, and nearly 20 million people participated. After the war, America began advancing and growing at an incredible rate. The growing highway system began dividing the country into what we now think of as urban and rural. As people spread out of the cities and into the suburbs, the need for large amounts of food to be transported across the nation arose. Food began to be imported from longer distances, and huge corporations began taking over the majority of farms. Farming in America has continued to be consolidated over the last 100 years, and we're quickly losing our health and future to large monolithic companies that care more about profit than people. Factory farming encourages the spread of disease, loss of diversity in crops, damage to the environment, and many more problems. Fixing the mess created by industrial farming won't be easy, but it starts with people like you taking back the food supply. Yards are great spaces for growing, but you can start with a window box, a balcony, and maybe one day an entire city block. Urban farming provides healthy and fresh food to your area, community engagement and growth, local job opportunities, ecological improvements, and much more. Across the United States, people in cities have been rediscovering agriculture and influencing the food system. In Detroit, Michigan, people are using urban farming to revitalize whole city blocks. Residents of Oakland, Chicago, New York, and many other cities are joining the more than 800 million people worldwide who work in agriculture already. One family can typically offset their produce needs by 30 to 40% by eating food from their own garden. Imagine the impact you can have by joining the growing community of urban farmers. It all starts with planting a seed, and Farmur is here to help you get started today.
So that's a broad overview of what Farmur is, and the website itself is actually a way to dive in a little bit deeper to the video. And as you can see, you're presented with screens that are very similar and familiar to the person who is, or the user, but there's a little bit more information on each page that people can dive into. There are also different interactive elements, timelines that people can click on. It goes both ways. People can move left and right on certain sections. I'm going to go ahead and just move ahead here. You can also click and drag, which works with a touch interface on a tablet. Here's an example of one of the interactive infographics, and this is visualizing the population change from rural to urban. And as you can see, in 1910, there's 54% lived in rural areas, and I'm going to go ahead and just drag this all the way over to 2010. And you can visualize that the population not only shifted to urban areas, but also our agricultural labor force disappeared pretty much. We're at 1.6% now, whereas in 1900 we were at 39%. Quite a change. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to a section called the calculator. And this is the estimate your needs page, and it's essentially just a way of helping people visualize and understand what size garden space they would need to grow specific food for a certain amount of people. I'll go ahead and just demo it. I'll add myself. I ate above average, and I'll say my name is Mark. And go ahead and add a vegetable I'd like to grow. I'm going to say I would like to grow, let's go with chard. Add this. So as you can see, there I am. There's chard. And over here on this side, you can see that there's estimated food costs based on USDA numbers, based on one person. I can add more people, it'll adjust. My savings if I was to grow my own food. This is the estimated garden size I would need to grow to support me for growing chard. It adjusts as you add more, and the estimated yield is 4 pounds based on that. Ultimately, people end up on the Plan Your Garden page where there will be a tutorial to allow people to download, say, building a raised bed or a container garden. Basically just setting it up with a little plan of how to get started. Jump back over to my presentation here. Just to continue, I'll talk a little bit about my process. And basically, I went through lots of user testing, or 4 different phases, but this was in the end goal of trying to make Farmur a better product. These are different versions of testing that I did. I started with low fidelity, did some wireframes, also some high fidelity, clickable prototype, and then working site. But all along the way, I was learning a lot about Farmur and how to improve it. And I was receiving feedback, and I was required to give a response to that and update it and change it. Basically, one of the things I was told was that it was a little too utilitarian. So what I tried to do is I focused on telling a story. I was also asked, what about content? Where are you getting your sources? Like, what is this? And on each page is a little more information button that people can click on that opens up a modal that basically has all the sources for that exact page. And I'll talk a little bit more about the sources in a bit. But I revealed the sources earlier as my response. I was also told make it a little bit more engaging. So what I tried to do is add interactive elements. And you saw a few of those in there, but I tried to make it a little bit more about discovering it instead of just reading it. I was also told that people were having trouble navigating early on. So what I tried to do was added a global menu that you can jump anywhere in any section at any time just by clicking that button. And I also enlarged the directional buttons, as you could see along the bottom or the right side, depending on where I intended the person to go. And they're a giant orange button with an arrow on it. So the information architecture you've already kind of seen as I did the walkthrough. It's basically a really long page But it also has these side pages where there's a motion graphic, and there's also like these sections off that people can skip, but they offer a lot more information that if people want to dive in deeper, they can. Primary use case scenario is all about learning. And I want people to learn about urban farming and walk away feeling inspired that they could do something about this. And start off at home, move down to the Estimate Your Needs page, and calculate how it applies to them and what they can do and what size or space they would need. And ultimately, they would end up downloading a plan to get started. One of the inspirations that I had for Farmur was a website called inequality.is, and it's a data-driven, highly visual infographic site that adjusts its visuals for the user itself. You can type in your name and age and different things, and it gives you an interactive experience that is highly applicable to the person who's actually using it. It's a very interesting website, and I highly recommend checking it out if you get the time. During my visual development, I tried to stick with colors that were in a natural palette or inspired by nature of some sort, and you can see on the side here that this is an illustration using pretty much every color in my palette as an example. I used fonts called Roboto Slab and Lato. Farmur works on a Mac, a PC, or a tablet computer at this time. It does need a minimum width of 960 pixels, but it can go smaller on some, but I can't guarantee it at this point. It is a modern website, and if you don't have a modern browser, it may not function properly. Software that I used to create Farmur in general was, first off, the Adobe Creative Suite. Adobe Creative Suite has been open on my computer for about 3 years straight, only closing when I restart my computer. I use Cinema 4D to create models for little airplanes and different elements and animations in the video. I use HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, a little bit of jQuery, and Swiper.js is a library that allows me to do the interactions between the pages and tell me where I'm at. A lot of the content, as I was discussing early, people were very interested in where I'm getting this, and on each page there is information where those sources are coming from, but they're all from like websites like the EPA, the FDA, the USDA, all government websites with a little bit of sprinkling from my own personal ideas and experience. In conclusion, talk a little bit about my next steps. And Farmur, in early 2015, I'm currently on this month break. I was working really hard on this, and I decided I needed to take a short break, which I'm currently on. But I would like to continue to build out Farmur, and I would like to show it to urban farmers, get responses, things that I could do better, ways that I can improve it, continue development, create a business plan, and potentially seek investors for what I would like to call phase 2, where I would like to begin building that out in mid-2015, connect with local businesses, create some more tutorials and content that aren't on there yet, but make it a more robust site, and also hire key positions if I was to able to get some investment. In 2016 and beyond, I would like to launch phase 2 and continue to pivot and grow. And that's Farmur. Thank you for letting me present this to you today. Different notebooks and lots of pencils and paper.
When you feel like it's clean and there's nothing extraneous.
I've grown a lot while I've been here, and I think a lot of that growth is because of the city.
You come out of the program with a lot of skills, and you can choose which area is it that you're most passionate about, that you want to work in.